In the kingdom of Vayrith, where the great stone palace rose above the city like a watchful giant, life moved in strict and unspoken order. Alphas ruled the halls above, betas managed the busy work of the court, and omegas, rare and often unseen, stayed hidden, protected only by silence. Leora had learned this lesson early. She was 23 years old, small in size but steady in spirit, and she worked in the lowest part of the palace kitchens, far from the golden halls where nobles walked. Every morning she woke before sunrise, tied back her dark hair, and slipped a small silver charm around her neck. The charm was old, worn smooth by years of touching, and it did something few people understood. It hid her true scent. It made her smell like nothing at all, like a beta, like someone safe. Without it, anyone with a sharp enough nose would know in an instant what she truly was. An omega. And in Vayrith, omegas were not safe in open places. They were claimed, traded, or locked away for their own protection, which often felt like no protection at all. So Leora hid. She scrubbed pots. She carried firewood. She kept her eyes low and her voice lower, and no one questioned her. There was only one task in the palace that everyone else refused. Every night, after the kitchens closed, someone had to carry the scraps down to the far end of the courtyard, where King Draven kept his wolves. The wolves were not ordinary animals. They were massive, gray and black, with eyes that seemed to know too much. They had come with the king from the Northern War, and no one, not even the most experienced palace guard, could get near them without the beasts baring their teeth and snapping the air. Feeding them had become a punishment duty, something new servants were forced to do until they proved themselves brave enough for better work, or until they quit from fear. Leora did not quit. When the head cook first sent her down with a heavy sack of meat scraps, she expected to be afraid. Instead, standing at the edge of the stone enclosure, watching 6 pairs of golden eyes turn toward her in the dark, she felt something else entirely. A strange, quiet calm. She did not run. She did not throw the food and hurry away like the others did. She knelt at the low iron gate, set the food down slowly, and began to hum a soft tune her mother used to sing to her as a child. The wolves, who had snarled at every servant before her, went still. That was the beginning. Night after night, Leora returned. She began speaking softly to them as she worked, telling them about her day, about the ache in her back from scrubbing floors, about the way the moon looked different depending on the season. She did not know if the wolves understood her words, but she believed they understood her voice. Slowly, the largest of them, a wolf with a scar above his left eye, began to approach the gate and lay his great head against the bars whenever she came near. The other kitchen workers noticed the change but said little. They were only glad someone else had taken the frightening task off their hands. No one asked how she had done it. No one asked why the wolves, once wild and untouchable, now waited by the gate each evening as though counting the hours until she arrived. No one, except the king himself. King Draven ruled Vayrith with a steady, guarded strength. He had fought in the Northern Wars as a young man, and had returned changed, quieter, slower to trust. His wolves were the only creatures he fully believed in, because they had fought beside him, and never once betrayed him. When his steward mentioned, almost as a passing comment, that the wolves had become strangely calm in recent weeks, Draven did not think much of it. But when he visited the enclosure himself one afternoon, and found all 6 wolves resting peacefully, ears twitching only at the sound of footsteps, he grew curious. He asked who had been tending them. The answer surprised him. A kitchen servant. A young woman. No one important, the steward said. Just someone doing an unwanted chore. Draven said nothing more that day, but the thought stayed with him. His wolves did not simply calm down for anyone. They had once frightened away trained handlers twice her size. Something about this servant was different, and Draven, a man who trusted little, wanted to understand why. That night, instead of retiring to his chambers, he walked the long stone path toward the courtyard and stood in the shadows near the old garden wall, where he could watch without being seen. He saw her arrive with the sack of scraps balanced against her hip, her steps light and unhurried. He saw the wolves rise from where they lay and move toward the gate, not with hunger, but with something closer to joy. He watched as she knelt down, set the food aside, and pressed her palm gently against the scarred wolf's nose through the bars. She began to hum. Draven found himself unable to look away. There was something achingly familiar in the scene, though he could not name it. It was not fear he felt watching her. It was something gentler, something that had been buried under years of duty and loss. Then, as she shifted to reach for the empty sack, her cloak slipped from her shoulder. The wind changed direction, drifting from her toward where Draven stood hidden. And in that instant, his senses, sharpened by years as an alpha, caught something beneath the plain scent of kitchen smoke and soap. It was faint, but unmistakable. Warm, soft, achingly rare. An omega. Draven's breath caught. He had not scented anything like it in years, not since before the war, when such things still felt possible in his life. He watched her straighten, adjust her cloak, and touch the small silver charm at her throat, as though checking it was still in place. The scent faded again, hidden once more. He understood then. She was masking herself, hiding in plain sight, in his own palace, surrounded by his own guards, for who knew how long. He did not step forward that night. He only watched her finish her task, wave a soft good night to the wolves as though they were old friends, and disappear back toward the servants' quarters. Then he stood alone in the dark for a long while, turning over what he had seen. The next evening, Draven arrived at the courtyard before she did. When Leora walked down the familiar path with her sack of scraps, she stopped short at the sight of the king standing near the gate, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Her heart dropped. For a moment she thought of turning and running, but she knew that would only make things worse. She forced her feet forward and gave a small, respectful bow. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice steady despite the fear pounding in her chest. "I did not know you would be here tonight." "Clearly," Draven said, though there was no anger in his tone, only quiet observation. "You've been coming here every night for weeks." "Yes, Your Majesty. Someone must feed them. They do not let anyone else near them." Leora said nothing. She kept her eyes on the ground, waiting for whatever would come next. Draven studied her for a long moment. "Take off your cloak," he said finally. She stiffened. "Your Majesty, Please," he said, softer this time. "I already know. I only wish to be certain." Her hands trembled as she loosened the cloak from her shoulders. The night air touched her skin, and without the wool to trap it close, her scent rose gently into the space between them. Draven watched something like relief and dread cross her face at the same moment. "An omega," he said quietly, "hidden in my own kitchens." "Please," Leora said, her voice breaking slightly. "I never meant harm. I only wanted to survive. If it became known, I would have been taken from my work, perhaps claimed by someone I did not choose, perhaps sent away entirely. I have no family left to protect me. The charm was the only protection I had." Draven was quiet for a long moment, watching her. He thought of the way his wolves had gone still under her hands, the way they had trusted her instantly and completely, something they had never done for another living soul since arriving in Vayrith. Animals did not lie. They did not perform loyalty out of fear or duty. What they showed her was real. "You are not in trouble," he said at last. Leora looked up, startled. "Your Majesty? You concealed your identity to protect yourself in a kingdom that offers little protection to people like you. I cannot fault you for that." He paused, glancing toward the wolves, who had gathered near the gate again, watching the two of them with quiet interest. "They have never trusted anyone the way they trust you. Not my guards, not my handlers, not even some nights myself. They are gentle creatures," Leora said softly. "Beneath everything, they only wanted someone to be patient with them." Draven looked at her for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes. Perhaps that is true of more than wolves. Leora did not know how to answer that, so she said nothing, though her heart beat strangely fast in her chest. Over the following days, word did not spread, for Draven made certain of that. But something between them had changed. He began visiting the courtyard in the evenings, standing a respectful distance away while she tended to the wolves, sometimes asking quiet questions about her life, her family, the years before she came to the palace. Leora found herself answering honestly, something she had not done with anyone in a very long time. She learned that Draven too carried old wounds. The war had taken friends he never spoke of. The crown had taken any chance at an ordinary life. His wolves were the only companions who had never asked anything of him beyond his presence. And in that, she realized, they were very much alike. Weeks passed. The wolves grew calmer still, welcoming Draven's presence beside Leora's without hesitation, as though sensing something settling between the two humans they had chosen to trust. One evening, as autumn winds swept gold leaves across the courtyard stones, Draven found Leora sitting quietly beside the enclosure, the scarred wolf resting his great head in her lap. "I have been thinking," Draven said, lowering himself to sit nearby, an act so unlike a king that Leora glanced at him in surprise. "About what it means to hide. Your Majesty? You hid to survive. I hid too, though not behind a charm. I built walls instead. Distance. I told myself it was strength." He looked toward the wolves. "But they never needed me to be strong. They only needed me to be present. Perhaps people are not so different." Leora's throat tightened with emotion she did not fully understand. "What are you saying, Your Majesty?" "I am saying that I do not wish for you to hide any longer. Not from me, and not from a kingdom that should learn to be worthy of you." He turned to face her fully. "I wish to offer you my protection, openly, as more than a servant, if you will accept it." Tears gathered in Leora's eyes, though she found herself smiling despite them. "The court will not approve." "The court," Draven said, "has never once earned the loyalty of 6 wolves who trust no one. You have. I think that matters more." Leora looked down at the wolf resting against her, then back up at the king, who had once seemed as distant and untouchable as the animals he kept. For the first time in years, she reached up and unclasped the silver charm from around her neck, setting it gently on the stone beside her. The wind carried her true scent freely into the night air, and this time, she did not flinch or turn away. She let it be known. Draven reached out and covered her hand with his own, steady and warm. The wolves, sensing something settle between their two humans at last, lay down peacefully around them, as though standing guard over something precious, finally allowed to exist in the open. From that night forward, Leora no longer walked the palace halls unseen. She stood beside the king, not as a secret kept safe by silence, but as someone whose quiet strength had tamed what no one else could reach, and in doing so, had reached the heart of a king who had long ago stopped believing anyone could.